When it comes to fighting game lore, Mortal Kombat puts a lot of work into crafting a story, but with the franchise being around for over 30 years, things are bound to be changed, and because some storylines were experimental, the series is full of retcons that try to explain things away in a single sentence, or just rewrite plot points to be similar but not the same. So for this video, I want to go over some of the more extreme character retcons in the series. Quite simply, these are lore details that were established in one game and then changed in a future game. And to note, the story in the first 7 games were in the same timeline, which I'll call the original timeline, and then Mortal Kombat 2011, aka Mortal Kombat 9, featured a time travel plot with future Raiden giving his past self visions from the future that went back to the storyline starting in the first game. So any contradicting details that were established in that game's story before Raiden's visions caused the story to go in a different path from the old story also count as retcons, along with any details contradicted in the 2 games that follow Mortal Kombat 9. Those games will be called the alternate timeline. Then there's the rebuilt timeline from Mortal Kombat 1 released in 2023, but that won't be a factor on this list, so we don't have to worry about it. Now, let's flip the script with the top 10 craziest retcons in Mortal Kombat. Number 10. Skarlet's Origin. I'm mixed on how I feel about Skarlet's retcon since it is so drastic from her initial appearance, but she was DLC in Mortal Kombat 9 for that initial appearance, so her lore was just a character bio and non-canon arcade mode ending. The lore wasn't as established as an older character, but they still showed how her blood manipulation clearly worked in MK9, so it was obvious Mortal Kombat 11 was a total retcon. Skarlet's rumored origin was in Mortal Kombat 2. People said that there was a color error that turned Kitana's outfit red, and they claimed that was a secret character named Skarlet, but it was just a retread of the rumor that the ninja palette in the first game would turn red when there was an error creating Ermac, so there was no proof of Skarlet. Anyway, after years of running that rumor, the dev team made Skarlet official in Mortal Kombat 9, but as DLC, so she was absent from the story mode outside the background, and she got a trailer showing that she was chained to the Coliseum as one of Shao Kahn's creations. He used the blood splattered from fighters there over the years to make her, and she absorbs warriors' blood as her power to make herself stronger, which is why she's stuck in the bloodiest battlefield in the game when she's not let loose. The DLC characters in Mortal Kombat 9 did not talk, so they leaned into her being a cold-blooded killer with nothing on her mind except loyalty to Shao Kahn. Her moveset was about using the blood that she saved as a weapon or maneuver in battle and just kunai for the rest. Her best tool was her blood dash that you could cancel in and out of attacks for pressure, which lets you keep moving forward so your opponent has to keep on blocking. She could turn into blood too, and when she wins, she would steal the blood of her enemy. Complex stuff for fighting, but visuals that show off her power. Good character design. For Mortal Kombat 11 though, she was pretty much a different character. No longer was she a ninja, now she was a mage, and instead of being a creation of Shao Kahn, she was a starving person on the streets that he used blood magic on to recreate her, essentially turning her into a new person. We don't know what she looked like before, but we can assume it didn't really matter if she was human or not since her backstory was not relevant to the story mode of Mortal Kombat 11, and she was just doing normal henchman things again. So why did they add that detail? What was wrong with her just being a creature made of blood? The outcome was the same, and making her initially human doesn't change her role in the story. And the moveset was completely rewritten on how she uses the blood. The only things that were carried over from her original appearance was her blood ball projectile, and that she stabs herself to activate some of her blood moves. Gone was the blood dash and rush down, and now she was more about creating blood tentacles, spears, and scythes. She can also create auras of blood and use it to lift up the opponent. Her powers look insanely cool here. The animation on her forming the blood tools is enough to make you want to try her out. Regardless of how much you like the original, you gotta admit they gave her a lot more in Mortal Kombat 11. They just wanted to redo the blood power idea for Mortal Kombat 9, and that's okay, but it feels like the main reason they did so much is because she wasn't strongly established in the lore, so there wasn't much to redo to begin with. In the end, you could have told me each Skarlet appearance was a different character, and I'd believe you. Number 9. Raiden's original bio was completely redone. The first Mortal Kombat game is ultimately going to have different lore from how the series ended up, since they were just spitballing ideas at the time, but most characters had the groundwork for who they became. However, no character had such a drastically different personality than Raiden. He was still the Thunder God taking a human form, but he was just at the tournament because Shang Tsung invited him according to his bio, and Raiden wanted to show these mortals a good what for on what gods can do with a weakened human body. I don't know if this version of Raiden had a history of picking fights, since why would Shang Tsung randomly say, "Hey, you know what this tournament needs? The God of Thunder." None of those other gods though, screw them. If Raiden wins the arcade ladder, we see his true intentions, where he says no one was a challenge, and as it states, he quickly became bored with his mortal competition and soon invites other gods to participate in the contest. The ensuing battles rage on for years, and the wars result in our world's final destruction. Have a nice day! So it's the chaotic neutral ending. Everyone dies if Raiden wins. That's essentially the villain ending in other games. Shang Tsung gives us the Years of Darkness ending in Mortal Kombat 2, and even has the sarcastic "Have a nice day" to end the paragraph, which is one of my favorite bits of comedy from the old games that they still reference occasionally. This arrogant god Raiden was short-lived, as the second game rewrote him as the Guardian of Earthrealm. He served as a mentor now, who could only intervene if directly challenged to a fight, which is how he can enter the tournament, and all reimaginings of this initial tournament, like Mortal Kombat 9's story, retconned him as the Guardian mentor from the start. Even when Raiden went dark, it was still for the sake of Earthrealm, where he was just being no tolerance against anyone who threatens it. He was still a good guy, technically. So if you want to play a version of Raiden who truly doesn't care about Earthrealm, you'll have to go back to the true beginning.
Raiden wins. Fatality.
Number 8. Mileena did not grow up with Kitana. Mileena is my favorite Mortal Kombat character, so of course I had to put her on the list. She's arguably my favorite fighting game character overall. Anyway, original timeline Mileena was cloned from Kitana when she was a baby, and they were told they were twins growing up. Shao Kahn planned to replace Kitana with Mileena, since, long story short, he took Kitana's mother as his queen after conquering her realm, and continued to raise her after the mother was killed. He was just raising Kitana as his daughter to use her as an assassin, but he expected her to eventually rebel, so this was his backup plan. Mileena was going to be loyal anyway, so hey, why not use her? Mileena was also cross-cloned with Tarkatan DNA, being the monster warrior race that works for Shao Kahn, since it would make her naturally stronger than Kitana. But Shao Kahn did not account for her teeth developing to be sharp and inhuman as they grew up, so Mileena had to wear a mask. The plan to replace Kitana was going to be implemented in the story of Mortal Kombat 2, so the sisters were at odds with each other, and growing up together, they had a long history and knew each other's moves, making it an interesting rivalry. Mileena eventually did get the throne in Mortal Kombat Deception after Kitana's temporary death and Shao Kahn's death/disappearance, so good for her. She failed a few times before that, so good to see her get a W. Better than the time she tried to attack Kitana by yelling "Titty Qua" and got surprised with a pitfall.
You will die, sister, and I will take this realm for myself!
But with that lore firmly established, let's go to Mortal Kombat 9. It was just different. They show us that Mileena was cloned when Kitana was already an adult, and Kitana was going to be killed to be replaced with a lookalike that still looked drastically different when you look up close, but we can just wink at those details. I get the retcon, but I'm not sure why they ignored the whole growing up together plotline. They didn't even try to ease into the change. They just said, "We hope you didn't read the 20 years of character backstories leading to this." The big thing they got rid of here was the sister angle. They no longer knew each other. Kitana just viewed Mileena as a monster from the start, and Mileena was told Kitana sucks and rolled with it. Also, did Mileena naturally have eyeshadow on all the time, or did Shang Tsung do her makeup when preparing her? There was such a disconnect from them, where Kitana's final fight in her Mortal Kombat 9 chapter was not Mileena, but rather Shang Tsung, since she had a stronger connection with the sorcerer who made Mileena because she knew him growing up, rather than the character who used to be her sister in the old canon. Mileena still calls Kitana a sister after the retcon, but it definitely feels more sarcastic or sinister now. And then in in Mortal Kombat X's storyline, after Mileena gets and loses the throne, they never interact. Mileena doesn't care about Kitana now, and Kitana never brings up Mileena, even in Mortal Kombat 11's story. The only times they interact is with their custom intros in Mortal Kombat X and 11, and these are good, but Kitana is still like, this thing sucks when she sees Mileena, while Mileena is very into the rivalry, doing the whole sister bit. Ain't she great?
Beloved sister, you are a perversion. I am Empress of Outworld!
That being said, the best Mileena intro interactions might actually be with Liu Kang, since she's doing the whole I'm better than that girl bit, and she can do a flawless imitation of Kitana's voice that I guess she just doesn't ever want to do otherwise.
I fooled you completely, Liu Kang.
No, not for 1 minute.
Help me, Liu Kang. Help me.
For my preference, I like the old backstory better, but alternate timeline Mileena is still a load of fun in the lore and especially to play.
Tasty.
Mileena wins.
Number 7. Kano is Australian. One of Kano's greatest traits is he's Australian, also hairy, but both those were not notable in the original trilogy. As with Raiden, early Mortal Kombat lore sets the groundwork, but details change as new games come out. Kano was introduced as a knife-wielding, ball-rolling arms dealer with a cybernetic eye on the run from the law. His national origin and hairstyle were pretty much secondary at that point. Anytime a birthplace was brought up in the early days for him, it was unknown. He was previously in Japan where his adoptive mother was, but they kept that pretty vague. And for the hair, I'm not sure if anything was hard planned, or if they just went with what his digitized actor Rich DeVizio was rocking, being a pretty standard hairstyle in the first game, and bald in the third game. I feel like bald Kano was the more iconic look for early Kano designs, but in the end, the cybernetic eye and DeVizio's portrayal of him were the most important parts of his design, so the hair didn't matter if those other parts were consistent. Things changed for Kano around the release of Mortal Kombat 3, when the series got its first live-action movie in 1995 based around the events of the first game with a bit from the second. For Kano, he was portrayed by British actor Trevor Goddard, who gave him an Australian accent and grew out his facial hair for the role. Since Kano's big things were the cybernetic eye and knives, they could take some liberties as long as those details were present. We knew who he was when we saw that metal plate with the glowing red eye. And not only was this an iconic performance, but fans and the devs viewed this as the ideal version of Kano now. As such, the next time we saw him in games, Deadly Alliance and Armageddon, it was pretty much Trevor Goddard. The facial hair and accent were prominent now. No idea what Kano's design would have looked like once they switched to 3D graphics without the live-action movie, but thanks to that role, it cemented that Kano was Australian and never clean-shaven in future games. Mortal Kombat 9 also established in the story that he was in his Trevor Goddard appearance from the time of the first tournament, and then they sort of retconned the retcon in Mortal Kombat 11, where early timeline Kano was back to being bald and shaven, possibly to differentiate the younger and older Kanos visually with the timeline disruption in that story. It's also possible he was just plucked from a point in time before the first tournament when he was shaven, but really it's not that important, and he was still very Australian regardless, so that retcon was strongly in effect.
Over 50 and still a ripper.
While bald Kano is still taken out frequently in the modern games, when it comes to his default skin, he needs that mustache, beard, and Aussie combo, or else it isn't fully Kano.
Kano wins.
Number 6. Noob Saibot is the Elder Sub-Zero. This is one of those facts that's been in the lore for so long, I forgot it's technically a retcon. In Mortal Kombat 2, there was a secret character named Noob Saibot, who you could only encounter by winning 50 games in a row in 2-player mode, and he was just a ninja that was completely blacked out with Scorpion's moveset in high difficulty. Nothing was really planned for him. Same in Mortal Kombat 3, though he was eventually made playable in a later update of the game, so they had had to give him a backstory, saying he was a spy from the Netherrealm. Keep it vague, give us room to adjust the backstory later. His official powers were the shadows, most notably being able to send out shadow clones to fight. He was also in Mortal Kombat 4, which was his last appearance as an unknown fighter. And throughout all these appearances, yeah, that's what he was, just another fighter, no origin. But in Mortal Kombat Deception, they brought him back alongside Smoke to reveal he was the elder Sub-Zero brother this whole time. Bi-Han was the name of the Sub-Zero from the first game, and in the second game and beyond, it was his brother Kuai Liang, who took the mantle of Sub-Zero to avenge his slain brother, who was killed by Scorpion. Bi-Han was said to have killed Scorpion and his family, causing Scorpion to be reborn as a specter out for revenge, which he later got, and then the cycle of revenge continues with the younger brother, yada yada, you know how it goes, but it's okay, they both learn the truth later. But the point was, Bi-Han was supposedly dead for good, with the potential that he was still alive based on Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 having classic Sub-Zero on the roster alongside unmasked younger Sub-Zero. People assumed we were just going to have two Sub-Zeros in some form, but with Noob doing nothing in the lore, why not connect him to Bi-Han so both the brothers can coexist without having the same powers? So the updated story was, Quan Chi revived Bi-Han as a wraith to do his bidding, meaning he can roam free if Quan Chi is killed, and now the brothers can fight that Bi-Han was working for Hell and was always kind of a jerk. Mortal Kombat 9 firmly establishes that Bi-Han was revived as Noob right away, so there was no ambiguity on who's who. It's very well known in the lore now, so it's pretty clean to explain, but the big question people have asked is, what's the deal with the Shadow Guy? Is that also Bi-Han or some other specter? Well, the devs have brought that up in interviews as sort of a joke, saying that Bi-Han is actually Noob and the Shadow Guy is Saibot, so that's why they're named that. How did they get those names to begin with? I don't think the lore explains it, but the real life reason is, those are the last names of the game's creators spelled backwards, Ed Boon and John Tobias, so they were just being silly, and thus we got the coolest noob to ever live.
New Cyber wins.
Number 5. The existence of one being. As Mortal Kombat lore evolved, they kept finding ways to put a bigger boss above whatever was at the top of the hierarchy at the time, and that peaked to me in Mortal Kombat Deception when they introduced the lore of one being. This was an entity who tried to absorb the Elder Gods before the dawn of the realms, but after banding together, they were able to take down the unbeatable guy by separating his consciousness into various realms. So Earth Realm, Outworld, the Netherrealm, Chaos Realm, etc., they're not just worlds that existed for no reason. They were actually created from a giant guy who wants to kill gods and such. And they put his essence into relics called the Kami Dogu that were locked away across the various realms to ensure one being would never be whole again. I know it's Mortal Kombat lore, but this one always felt extra silly to me. I never thought we needed lore for how the different realms were just a part of a guy, but it definitely was a retcon that got my attention, so that's why it's here. This was established in future games, but outside of character interactions or arcade mode endings, it was more just passive knowledge. I feel like they were done with this piece of lore after Mortal Kombat Deception, but they were stuck with it, so they just kinda stuffed it in the corner. However, a retcon that came along with this is one being's consciousness was still active. Since he was unable to reform his body, he influenced other strong leaders across time to conquer and merge other realms with wherever they resided, to bring one being a step closer to becoming whole again. That means when Shao Kahn or Onaga wanted to conquer realms to become a part of Outworld, it was the lingering thoughts of one being that were pushing them to do so. Maybe they still wanted to get new land because they're like that, but the overarching storyline explanation is because there was apparently a supernatural force trying to become whole again. As you could guess, I was never crazy about that storyline either. It just made sense that a villain wanted ultimate power because they wanted it. We don't need an ancient being telling them to do so too. Though I did like Shinnok's ending in Mortal Kombat X, where he was mad at the Elder Gods and just said, screw it, I'm bringing back one being, I don't care anymore, and then everyone dies. I don't know if Shinnok also falls into the category of being silently influenced by one being or if he more closely communicated with him, but I like that Shinnok was action here, not just talk when it came to this storyline. Good on him.
Death to all. Shinnok wins.
Number 4. When did Kabal join the Black Dragon? Kabal was initially introduced as a mysterious man in a mask with mysterious powers, like random powers, super speed, purple blasts, hook swords, and a ground saw all in one. The ground saw really threw me off the first time I saw it, since where did he even get that? We learn he used to be a part of Kano's gang, the Black Dragon, but reformed to be a good guy. However, he relapsed after Kano's defeat and saw an opportunity to create a new Black Dragon clan in Mortal Kombat Deception. Pretty cut and dry, bad to good, back to bad. And when the story was revisited in Mortal Kombat 9, Kabal got a bit more backstory with similar results. He was still formerly Black Dragon, and now working as a cop with Stryker. We see he got his mask and powers after being severely burnt by Kintaro during the Earthrealm invasion, and Kano rescued him. He had Shang Tsung heal Kabal, which granted him his speed powers. However, his lungs were unsalvageable, which is why he now has to wear the mask with ventilator. Kano then tried to entice him to rejoin the Black Dragon with his old weapons, and Kabal refused because he's a good guy now. He still took the weapons though, since he was already designed with them. But there we have it, a series of specific events that explain how Kabal got his look, fighting style, and weaponry. He was also one of the warriors who died against Sindel and was revived as a Revenant, but that brings us to where Mortal Kombat 11's story muddied the waters of when Kabal truly left the Black Dragon. When Kronika brought the past into the present, young Kano was accompanied by Kabal from when they were cohorts, and you would assume this is from when he was on the Black Dragon before becoming a cop. But one intro line completely confused me. When Kabal is matched up against Jade, she says to past Kabal that he's as vile as his Revenant from the future, to which he responds, "Try taking a face turn, didn't take."
You're as vile as your revenant.
Tried a face turn. Didn't take.
I'd spare you if it had.
Since it's pre-mask Kabal, wouldn't that mean he did a face turn to become the cop but then relapsed to join the Black Dragon again, but then would have had to become a cop again when we saw the Kintaro confrontation happen when he was reformed? Well, he could technically go from bad to good again. Kabal's bio confirms that is not the case. He was a rookie cop until Kano tempted him to sell out his police department for cash and a spot in the Black Dragon. Kabal has run down anyone who's crossed Kano's path ever since. So yeah, this new backstory they gave Kabal in Mortal Kombat 9 was actually flipped, where he was a cop first and then Black Dragon, despite him clearly getting burned as a cop and rejecting Kano's offer. Once again, you could still say he left the Black Dragon later and went back to the Force leading into the Mortal Kombat 9 part of the story, but I get the vibe that's not really the case. What an unnecessary change. They can just say that younger Kabal was evil because he's from the past. They never touch on the cop storyline in this game, so it's like they're just changing things for the sake of it. Luckily, people care more about Kabal having his speed powers and hook swords, so I think Kabal fans will be fine.
Kabal wins.
Number 3. Sindel was evil the whole time. This would have been number 1 if I didn't go on that impassioned rant against her Mortal Kombat 11 backstory change on my worst redesign list, where she got number 1, and I don't need to repeat that 7-minute monologue here, but it is one of the most drastic backstory changes in the series, so it deserves a high spot here anyway, and I'll cover the highlights again. Queen Sindel was a loving mother who was married to King Jared in the land of Edenia. They had a daughter named Kitana, and they were living happily ever after, but then Shao Kahn conquered the realm and added it to Outworld. Also, he killed Jarad and took Sindel as his wife. She couldn't bear to be with him or see her realm fall, so she took her own life. Many years later, when Shao Kahn's Earthrealm takeover was not going as planned, he revives Sindel in Earthrealm since she technically was his wife, and through the rules of invasion set by the Elder Gods in the Mortal Kombat universe, he was allowed to enter Earthrealm to retrieve her since she was technically a part of Outworld, and while he's there, why not do a little conquering, take a little souls, get down tonight. Also, Sindel was now brainwashed into thinking that she was always his wife, though once Shao Kahn was defeated, the spell was broken on her, her, and now she was alive again and happy to be with her daughter, even getting a story arc where she rescues Katana in Mortal Kombat Deception. But when we got put in the alternate timeline, the first change was in Mortal Kombat 9, where her initial death was turned into a noble sacrifice. It was part of a spell that creates a magical barrier, protecting Earthrealm from being unlawfully invaded so no other realm falls like hers, which was added to the motivation to revive her to break the spell. Now if that was the only retcon, I don't think it would be list-worthy. However, the big one was in Mortal Kombat 11, where we learned that everything I just told you was pretty much faked. When Shao Kahn invaded, we see Sindel refuse to lose her throne, so she agreed to kill Jared and let Shao Kahn marry her. She also seemed to be into him, so that might have been a factor too. Sindel told her people that she was forced to do this, and her death was not a noble sacrifice now. We learn that Quan Chi actually killed her since he viewed her as a new threat to his eventual betrayal, and lied to Shao Kahn since he had his own motives to protect and he needed to throw Shao Kahn off. And now that we know this, Sindel can be evil out in the open after she's revived, confirming all these details. I don't like this. The fanbase didn't like this. I always thought it was cool that Sindel was this warrior queen that protected her people, but everything we knew was apparently wrong and she was just selfish. I will say, she plays a good villain. I would have liked her as a standalone character unrelated to Sindel, but her lore was established in Mortal Kombat 3 in 1995, and they just erased it 25 years later in a snap in 2019, so the length of time that she had the old lore really enhanced how much I did not like the change. This was not Scarlet where she was one character in one game and then another character in another game. You had multiple games spanning where she was the old Sindel. As I said, I could do a much more detailed rant, but I have that in another video. So for now, if they were to ever revisit that timeline, hopefully we learn that she was actually double brainwashed and she was lying about lying about lying.
That was fun!
Sindel wins. Friendship. Friendship again?
Number 2. Everything is Quan Chi's fault. Mortal Kombat loved Quan Chi so much, they just retroactively added him to the story once they realized they had a gem, and I think Quan Chi's a great villain, so it makes sense. He's good at acting loyal, he has cool necromancy powers, and he's delightfully camp. In my Bald Fighting Game Characters video, I praised his Mortal Kombat Mythology's portrayal for having the greatest faces and voice delivery by Rich DeVizio playing him, and Mortal Kombat 4 for just making him appear at the funniest times. But I also like the alternate timeline Quan Chi who's taken more seriously, since he has the best laugh thanks to his voice actor Ronald M. Banks. Regarding the retcons, it was pretty much Quan Chi inserting himself into past events once he established his presence. He made his game premiere in Mortal Kombat Mythology's Sub-Zero, where we learn he was the reason Bi-Han killed Scorpion. Bi-Han was misled by Quan Chi to retrieve an amulet in a deal made with his assassin clan, the Lin Kuei, and Quan Chi also seemed to know that Scorpion would be in the way for Bi-Han to kill so he could manipulate the both of them later. In the alternate timeline, it was also confirmed that Quan Chi was the killer of the rest of Scorpion's clan and family, but he framed the Lin Kuei so it would look like it was all Sub-Zero's fault. Now what else did he do? Well, he knew Scorpion would be useful, so we learned Scorpion was not just revived out of spite, Quan Chi revived Scorpion to use him as a servant. And guess what else? After Scorpion killed Bi-Han, Noob Saibot did not just rise out of nothingness too. That was also Quan Chi's doing once the Noob Saibot retcon was confirmed. Okay, so 2 revived fighters that he was responsible for the deaths of. Any other retcons we should note? Yes, we touched upon it in the last entry, but Quan Chi is actually responsible for the plotline of Mortal Kombat 3 getting started. We see in Mortal Kombat 9, it was actually his idea to revive Sindel in Earthrealm, spawning the invasion, and he did the reviving, not Shao Kahn or Shang Tsung. This was Quan Chi's idea behind the scenes. And of course, Mortal Kombat 11 adds on the retcon that he killed Sindel to begin with, rather than it being a sacrifice by Sindel, and then he puts up the barrier that protected Earthrealm, not Sindel, so that's why it went down when he revived Sindel. He was not breaking any spell, he was just releasing it. And with that, are there any other retcons we need to know about with him? Well, probably, but those are the big ones. However, one more to note is Mortal Kombat 9 and X as a whole retconned his Deadly Alliance redesign as his default look, even being what he was wearing to the first tournament. While him going shirt shirtless was inconsequential to the plot, the red markings on his body were only added in Deadly Alliance for the plotline where he wanted to revive the army of Onaga, the old ruler of Outworld, so this implies that he planned the Onaga release for a really long time starting at the first tournament, or they just liked how it looked and they forgot. Probably the latter, but to be fair, I can't imagine Quan Chi without them.
Quan Chi wins.
For number 1, I had to go with one of the big guys from the series, someone whose retcons either brought the hype factor or needed to tone him down to let the plot progress. Number 1, Shao Kahn was actually alive and won the final battle and was kinda misled. I mentioned in my fighting game antagonist video from back in the day that Shao Kahn is my favorite final boss in fighting games. He exuded raw power, was a tough and unfair boss fight, and was crafty on his own, getting legions of fighters to work for him and coming up with his schemes that just add to his realm and army. Also, he just had a badass helmet and hammer. A final boss with a giant hammer that takes out around a quarter of your health per swing just feels right. And the big thing about early Shao Kahn is he was brains and brawn. He made his own plans. It was his idea on how to invade the realms or poison the previous ruler of Outworld Onaga to take his throne, and he had the strength to back it up. So finally taking him down to move the story to a different villain was a big deal. However, he was just weakened after his defeat in Mortal Kombat 3. He wasn't really dead, but when Shang Tsung and Quan Chi were on their rampage as the Deadly Alliance, they killed the hindered Shao Kahn to truly make it the end of an era. And here's where the first retcon took place. They wanted to put Shao Kahn on another roster come Mortal Kombat Deception since he's Shao Kahn, who doesn't want to play as the boss. So they just said that Shao Kahn made a clone of himself that was killed instead, and he went into hiding after that. How did he make the clone? Where was he hiding? Don't worry about that, we just needed an easy explanation. But that leads into the bigger retcon that followed, Mortal Kombat Armageddon. This was possibly going to be the last game of the series in 2006, so they put every character they could on the roster, and had the main character be a new guy Taven, who would win the Armageddon battle that was supposedly going to kill off most of the other fighters outside of whoever beat the final boss Blaze at the top of the pyramid. But with Taven winning, it just made the fight stronger and left it open-ended that the universe would just have to survive in the meantime, and he would be the Guardian. However, when Mortal Kombat 9 wanted to give the series a fresh start, they didn't just want to reboot it as if nothing happened. So they decided to wrap up Armageddon in a different way at the beginning of the story mode in that game. Instead of going with Taven, why not go with the most iconic boss in the series and say Shao Kahn actually made it to the top instead? And as is tradition with villains winning, everyone dies. Everyone is dead in the intro with the exception of Raiden, who is about to die, so Raiden sends a message to his past self at the first tournament, creating the alternate timeline where past Raiden started doing different things, causing the story to go in a different direction. And they snuck retcons in there that were unaffected by the visions. For Shao Kahn, the main retcon he was affected by is he apparently did not come up with a lot of his ideas, in part due to him being misled by Quan Chi, so it was either Quan Chi or Shang Tsung coming up with the ideas and he was just saying, hey, good job, I like it. But ultimately, I'll consider that to be a more minor retcon for him. The point is, the original timeline ends with Shao Kahn winning. That is a major retcon and a big deal, especially since in the opening cutscene of Mortal Kombat Armageddon, Onaga is seen taking Shao Kahn off the pyramid and flying him off somewhere to kill him off screen. I don't know, maybe Shao Kahn bit his thumb and he dropped Shao Kahn and then he just ran back up to the top of the pyramid? In the end, Mortal Kombat 9 will always be my favorite game in the series, and everything happening within it technically wouldn't have happened if Shao Kahn's retcon didn't erase the ending of Armageddon, so I'll crown that as the top craziest retcon in this series.
Shao Kahn wins. Fatality.
Now, what did you think? Were all these retcons series-shattering, or were they barely noticeable? And what are some of your favorite Mortal Kombat retcons, whether I discussed them or not? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.